ਨੌਜਵਾਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਤੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਗੈਰ ਸਿੱਖ ਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਅਸੀਂ ਸਿੱਖੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਲਿਆਉਣਾ, ਸਿੱਖੀ ਬਾਰੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਦੱਸਣਾ। The Shaheed Singhs that fight, the Shaheed Singhs that were tortured, the Shaheed Singhs that were martyred, and they gave their own Shaheedi in their own minds in a very clear-cut way that has become our Sikh history. The sword of knowledge, this idea that if you arm yourself with knowledge, you are armed forever. These are where our Sikh Vidwans, people like Sardar Kapoor Singh, Sant Baba Jarnail Singh Khalsa Pindranwale, Sant Gyani Kartar Singh Pindranwale, people who used their knowledge in such a way to make sure that the Sikh Qaum was ready for what was going to come next. Hoye ekattar milo mere pai dubda dur karo live lie, that we should gather together and we should try and cross this worldly ocean together and try and understand what everything is. So based on this pangti, we are gathered here today to talk about Sardar Kapoor Singh. Sardar Kapoor Singh clearly talks about this betrayal that took place, what actually happened from before 1947 to the Sikhs. How are you continuously betraying the Sikhs up till now, and what's going on? Sardar Kapoor Singh was issuing a warning to the Indian government: if you will continuously attack the Sikhs, if you're going to continuously betray the Sikhs, eventually we are going to strike back. Guru Sahib writes in their Bani, "Jab hai baan lagyo tab hai ros jagyo." Nowadays we're asking for Khalistan, we're asking for our own Sikh Raj. But where is that Khalsa Panth in the first place? Kitthe gaya sada Khalsa Panth? The youth is divided into Jathebandis, the elders don't want to relinquish their states, and we're asking for an autonomous state. We're asking for a state where Sikhs have the most control. How are we going to have the most control where we don't even have control over our Khalsa Panth in the first place? ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ, ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। ਸੋ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਮੈਂ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦਾ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੇ ਬੁਲਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੇ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਮਾਂ ਬੋਲੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਬੋਲਿਆ ਹੈਗਾ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਮਾਂ ਬੋਲੀ ਅੱਜ ਕੱਲ੍ਹ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਸਾਂਭਣੀ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ ਆ। ਪਰ ਮੇਰਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਕੰਮ ਹੁੰਦਾ, ਮੇਰਾ ਕੰਮ ਇਹ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਵੱਧ ਤੋਂ ਵੱਧ ਯੂਥ ਨੂੰ ਅਤੇ ਨੌਜਵਾਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਅਤੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਗੈਰ ਸਿੱਖ ਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਅਸੀਂ ਸਿੱਖੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਲਿਆਉਣਾ, ਸਿੱਖੀ ਬਾਰੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਦੱਸਣਾ ਕਿ ਆਖਰ ਸਿੱਖੀ ਹੈ ਕੀ ਆ, ਸਿੱਖੀ ਦੀ ਮਹੱਤਤਾ ਕੀ ਆ। ਸੋ ਇਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਦੀ ਭਾਸ਼ਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਮਤਲਬ ਅੰਗਰੇਜ਼ੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਮੈਂ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਇਹ ਸਪੀਚ ਕਰੂੰਗਾ। ਸੋ ਵਿੱਚ ਥੋੜ੍ਹੀ ਜਿਹੀ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਵੀ ਹੋਊਗੀ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਓਬਵੀਅਸਲੀ ਗੁਰਬਾਣੀ ਪੰਕਤੀਆਂ ਵੀ ਮੇਰਾ ਕੰਮ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਕਿ ਗੁਰਬਾਣੀ ਦੇ ਆਧਾਰ 'ਤੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਆ ਬੋਲਣਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ। ਸੋ ਵੈਨਐਵਰ ਵੀ ਟਾਕ ਅਬਾਊਟ ਸਿੱਖ ਹਿਸਟਰੀ, ਜਦੋਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਸਿੱਖ ਹਿਸਟਰੀ ਵੱਲ ਅਸੀਂ ਜਦੋਂ ਝਾਤੀ ਮਾਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ, then there's always two types of people that we find in Sikh history. The first type is our Shaheed Singhs, Singhaniya, Pochangi Fauj, the Shaheed Singhs that fight, the Shaheed Singhs that were tortured, the Shaheed Singhs that were martyred, and they gave their own Shaheedi in their own minds in a very clear-cut way that has become our Sikh history. But as well as that, we also have the second type. Now, this second type isn't the type that's usually pracharred, but obviously talking about Sardar Kapoor Singh, this is the best way to set up the kind of person that Sardar Kapoor Singh was. They used a different type of talwar, which is known as the Gyan Kharag, the sword of knowledge. This idea that if you arm yourself with knowledge, you are armed forever. So these are where our Sikh Vidwans, people like Sardar Kapoor Singh, Sant Baba Jarnail Singh Khalsa Pindranwale, Sant Gyani Kartar Singh Pindranwale, people who used their knowledge in such a way to make sure that the Sikh Qaum was ready for what was going to come next. So when we talk about Sardar Kapoor Singh, the one thing that is always memorable about Sardar Kapoor Singh is that they were such a great soul who created this Sikh blueprint, this idea for the Sikh homeland, and they created this blueprint and handed it to the Naujawans, and they asked the youth to come forward and to take command of what will now be this Sikh Raj that we're asking for. And again, there's no one else that we can talk about, there's no one else that we can pass this on to but Sardar Kapoor Singh. So it was written in Tan Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji Maharaj, hoye ekattar milo mere pai dubda dur karo live lie, that we should gather together and we should try and cross this worldly ocean together and try and understand what everything is. So based on this pangti, we are gathered here today to talk about Sardar Kapoor Singh, what they did and how much I've been able to study in the short time that I've been able to study about Sardar Kapoor Singh, what I have found, what is important for the Sikh Naujawans, for other people to take through from Sardar Kapoor Singh's Jeevan and what they used to do. So, but before I go on to talking about Sardar Kapoor Singh, I'd like to kind of set the scene about what Guru Nanak Sahib did when they came to this planet. Because when Guru Nanak Sahib came to this world, The one thing that isn't really talked about is the way that they used to do prachar. Because nowadays, whenever we do prachar of Sikhi, we have this very, very terrible concept of saying that nahi ji ye manmat hai, edi koi gal karni hai. We say that this is a manmat, this is something that we've created ourselves, so why do we need to talk about that? But when Guru Nanak Sahib gave logic, Guru Nanak Sahib would always provide evidence for what he was saying. He would never just say that, oh, you know, what you're saying is wrong and that's it. He would give some sort of evidence, he would give some sort of reason for what he was saying. The purest example of that you can find was when Guru Nanak Sahib was asked by Pandit Gopal Das to wear a janeu. And what did Guru Sahib say? Guru Sahib said, Daya kapa, santokh soot, jat gandhi satvat. That Guru Sahib said that make compassion your cotton, contentment your thread, modesty your knot, and the truth should be the twist on it. So Guru Sahib gave some sort of logic towards what he was saying. He said that if a janeu isn't going to help me in any sort of way to get back to Akaal Purkh, then why should I wear it? And he provides evidence for everything he said. You can find this shabad on Anga number 471 in Tan Tan Sri Guru Granth Sahib Ji Maharaj. It's written in Rag Asa, and you can read it, the whole shabad. And the whole shabad gets to this point of an idea that really there is no need for faltu karam kand. When Guru Sahib went to Jagatnath Puri and he talked to the Pandits that were there, then Guru Sahib, then the Pandits used to say that you can do Aarti of Akaal Purkh in a small thal, and you can do it with some dive, you can do it with some pearls, and you can just do it in a very, very simple way. But Guru Nanak Sahib said that oh Akaal Purkh is inna vadda hai, that our Akaal Purkh is so big, he's samrat. He's not someone who just lives on this world. He's not some small idol that you lot worship. He's enna vadda samrat sada Guru. How can you do his aarti in such a small pan? And Guru Sahib then said the Shabad Gagan mein thal Rav Chand Deepak bane tar ka mandal jank moti. And Guru Sahib explained that aarti that we're talking about, it's not something that you do in a plate, it's something that you go out to experience, because Sikhi is all about the experience. When you go to a Gurdwara, the experience you feel there is something different compared to you sitting at home and doing absolutely nothing. So really Guru Nanak Sahib's whole philosophy was about providing logic, providing evidence for what we say. Nowadays our problem is we say that something is manmat, we say that something is faltu, and then we don't provide any evidence for it, and we expect people to understand that. Nowadays our Naujawans are very, very smart. Our kids are very, very smart. We're going to look on Google for things. We're going to search things up. If we don't find evidence for it, we're not going to follow it. So we have to provide evidence for everything we say nowadays. Pere de utte, sade utte hamle hui jande, we being attacked from every single side. In order to provide ourselves with something that we can combat ourselves with, we need to make sure that we have evidence for what we're saying. So again, you're probably wondering why I started off talking about Sardar Kapoor Singh in such a way when I talk about Guru Nanak Sahib's philosophy. Because in my mind, from what I understand about Sikhi, Vidwan nu us bande nu tusi keh sakde ho. You can call a Vidwan that person who understands Guru Nanak Sahib's logic, that person who understands the way Guru Sahib did prachar and does prachar in the same way. You cannot expect a Sikh Vidwan, no, I'm not talking about other scholars, a Sikh Vidwan to do prachar in any other way that Guru Nanak Sahib did not do. So if Guru Nanak Sahib provided logic, if Guru Nanak Sahib provided evidence, then a Sikh Vidwan must do the exact same thing, and he must work in a similar way. So Sardar Kapoor Singh was known as a general of Sikh advocacy. He was someone who used to use Guru Nanak Sahib's Vichartara, Guru Nanak Sahib's philosophy of doing prachar in a very correct way. Everything he used to say with evidence. And so we will be talking about Sardar Kapoor Singh's speech, one of his most famous speeches that he gave on the 6th of September 1966 during the Lok Sabha when they were discussing the Punjab reorganization bill. So this was a bill that was going to sever Punjab even more, cut Punjab up into even more pieces, right? And this speech was then given by Sardar Kapoor Singh, which you can find in the book Documents on the Sikh Homeland and Speeches in Parliament, page 305, Betrayal of the Sikhs, or in the Punjabi version of the book, Sikhan al Vasakat, where Sardar Kapoor Singh clearly talks about this betrayal that took place, what actually happened from before 1947 to the Sikhs. How are you continuously betraying the Sikhs up till now, and what's going on? One of the most notable things in Sardar Kapoor Singh's speech is how they started it off. They started it off by comparing Punjab and the majority community in India to curate's egg. Now, when I was a kid, I used to have a very, very big problem where obviously Guru Sahib di Kirpa naal I was joined with the Guru Kar, but I used to really enjoy reading Greek philosophy, Greek mythology. I always used to have this kind of really big grip on it. The reason why was because what I found in Greek mythology is that there was a lot of similarities in the terms of the way that the Greeks were built. They were built on a warrior culture and a philosophy culture. In the same way the Sikh Dharam was built on a warrior culture and a philosophical culture, as well as the rest of what Guru Sahibans gave us. So in the book Ancient Greek Mythology, page 907, you can actually find the story of curate's egg. And I want to explain the story because what I find interesting is how clever Sardar Kapoor Singh was and the kind of thing that they were actually saying when they were saying that this whole bill is like curate's egg. So this story that Sardar Kapoor Singh was initiating when they were talking about curate's egg was that there was a phoenix egg that was placed into a small village. And so a phoenix is a bird born of fire. So this was an unborn phoenix that was placed into a village. And the king of the village told his people that please do not bother this egg. This egg will hatch in its own time. If you bother the egg, it may not hatch in a correct way and it might cause some sort of problem. So please do not bother the egg. If this egg hatches in the correct way, then this phoenix will protect our village. It will protect our homeland. So some of the villagers started to get suspicious after a few days and they started to think, okay, you know what is this egg really? Is this just some sort of way that the king's trying to fool us? So they ended up going to the egg at night and they started poking the egg. They heard a grumble from inside and so they decided that, okay, maybe there's something legitimate about it. This carried on for a whole week. Now in this whole week, these attacks got more violent. People started to punch the egg. People started to do some really bad stuff to the egg. But the egg showed no retaliation. So on the final day, someone took a hammer and they smashed the egg open. Now when they smashed the egg open at this point, the phoenix had had enough and the phoenix was burnt into ashes. But from the ashes, just like the Gore say, from the ashes, the phoenix rose and destroyed everything in his path. He destroyed the whole pind. Now, what did Sardar Kapoor Singh say when he said that this was like curate's egg? What was the message that he was saying? The message wasn't that this was just some sort of ganda system that the Indian government had created. He was giving them a warning. He was issuing them a warning from the beginning that if you try and mess with the Sikhs any further, eventually the Sikhs will have to bite back. Guru Sahib writes in their Bani, Jabe baan lagyo tabe ros jagyo, that eventually when the arrow hit me, that's when I felt anger, that's when I felt remorse for what had happened, and that's when I struck back. In the same way, Sardar Kapoor Singh was issuing a warning to the Indian government: if you will continuously attack the Sikhs, if you're going to continuously betray the Sikhs, eventually we are going to strike back. And if you do something that's so wrong, that is so unimaginable, like they smashed the phoenix's egg, if they do something like that, and they destroyed our Akaal Takht, if they do something that far, eventually the Sikh Qaum was going to strike back in an angry force. It's just how nature works. It's just how philosophy works. It's just how everything works in the world. So this is something that's very, very noteworthy with Sardar Kapoor Singh. Their knowledge, the way they thought of things, wasn't just very, very simplistic. They went into things in a lot of detail to try and make things make people understand what was really going on. Another thing that's highly notable in Sardar Kapoor Singh's philosophy and in this speech that he actually told people was on page 307. He actually quotes the Mahabharata. Now the Mahabharata, for some people, it's a religious book. For some people, some people will also talk against it. But what's noticeable is in the Mahabharata, he quotes a small part of the Mahabharata, which says that he who has one thing on his mind but represents another for things, what other sin is he not capable of committing? He is a thief, a robber of his own self. So what Sardar Kapoor Singh is telling us here, from the Mahabharata, mind you, that this is really what the Indian government was doing. And he said that you people have this kind of consensus, you have this kind of thought that if you're going to ask for our help in the first place, you don't have to pay us back, right? And this is this kind of thought that they had. And this is the kind of thing we're seeing now. We're seeing it. Where has it been that Sikhs, any Sikh masala, any Sikh argument, anything that Sikh has asked for, where has it been done in India? We haven't seen it. We haven't seen it happen. And yet everyone around the world completely agrees with us. Everyone around the world makes laws specially for us. Recently, we saw the video that just came out the other day where a Sikh Naujawan was being beaten up, his dastar was taken off. In Canada, there is a 10-year saza on someone taking off a dastar of another Sikh. Yet in India, our homeland, where we were born, where we came from, that doesn't exist. So, where is this fair treatment that India keeps talking about, this secularism? Where is it? Because I don't see it. Right? So Sardar Kapoor Singh very, very clearly highlights this. And you know, the thing is, what's really, really noticeable is that tiyari naal sare kam hone chahiye. Whenever you do something, you should be prepared for it. If I went to a Gatka competition having no knowledge of how to fight in a Gatka form, how would I be able to fight? Right? In the same way, Sardar Kapoor Singh clearly highlights this one idea that you should be prepared for any scenario. Our Sikhs nowadays have this big problem where we are not prepared for anything. When the Sikh ethnicity movement started, when Sikhs were trying to ask for their own ethnicity, the judge sharped a bayan saying that the Sikhs had no evidence for what they were saying. He said, I would have happily provided it to them. Had they had evidence, it would have happened. But again, Sikhs have no evidence. We're not asking people for help. We need to provide evidence for what we're saying. In this world nowadays, everything works with evidence. So Sardar Kapoor Singh's theory is something that's more noticeable. Nowadays, we're asking for Khalistan, we're asking for our own Sikh Raj. But where is that Khalsa Panth in the first place? Kitthe gaya sada Khalsa Panth? The youth is divided into Jathebandis, the elders don't want to relinquish their states, and we're asking for an autonomous state. We're asking for a state where Sikhs have the most control. How are we going to have the most control where we don't even have control over our Khalsa Panth in the first place? This is the one thing that we need to understand. Our Khalsa Panth, Guru Sahib gave it to us for the point that we had this significant power that was not undertakeable, that could not be destroyed by anyone else, but we're destroying it ourselves because saadi apni tiyari hai nahi. We're asking other people for help. We were the people who were created to help other people. If we can't help ourselves, assi doojiyan di help sawa karni hai. It's really, really important. We have to understand these kind of things. What was our Sikh Vidwans tiyari like? That was what it was like, right? They were prepared to quote Greek mythology. They were prepared to quote the Mahabharata, their own religious books, to make their point. And they did make their point. And that's what's most noticeable. How is it that we do not do that kind of stuff nowadays? We talk about doing prachar in Angreji, and a lot of people tend to have a problem with that. But Sardar Kapoor Singh came to the University of Cambridge, got their doctorate here, and then they even went forward to talk about that kind of stuff in Angreji. This speech that I'm talking about now, the portrayal of the Sikhs, was originally in Angreji. But why is it now we don't want to see prachar in English? Why is it we don't want to see prachar in other languages? I was lucky enough actually to go to Japan a while ago, and you know, there ain't that many gurdwara there. There's 2 gurdwara there, but I was lucky enough to go to the one in Tokyo. Now, this Gurdwara, I'm not going to lie, I've never seen a Gurdwara like this. The Gurdwara was how we should expect our Gurdwara to be run. And it was in a state like Japan, where there are barely any Sikhs in the first place. Panj Pyare Sahibans rule the Gurdwara. There is no Gurdwara Prabandhak Committee. There is no one person saying, I'm the Pradhan of the Gurdwara. Guru Granth Sahib is the most important in the Gurdwara. Why is it that we have not in place some sort of system like that in our Gurdwara? In a place like Japan, where there are barely any Sikhs in the first place, yet they understand that. ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਗੱਲ ਦੀ ਸਮਝ ਆ ਗਈ ਆ ਕਿ ਸਿੱਖ ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ 5 ਪਿਆਰਿਆਂ ਦੇ ਅੰਡਰ ਗੁਰਦੁਆਰੇ ਚੱਲਣਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ. But we've got Prabandhak committees, we've got all this other stuff where we care more about cash than we do about our Gurdwara, where we care more about cash than we do our Guru Sahibwan. So it's really, really interesting how, you know, we go to other places, we talk about this kind of stuff, but what is our Sikh Vidwans, what is our people saying in the first place? understand Sikhi, learn about Sikhi, follow Sikhi and push forward in Sikhi. That's what we need to focus on now. We're talking about Sardar Kapoor Singh. We're talking about their Vichartara. We're talking about what they did in their life. But we should be aiming to now push our life forward in the same way. We should be aiming, if we want to give them a true tribute, Sachi Shraddhanjali je aapa dena chaਹੁੰਦੇ hain, then it's not going to be by, talking about it. Because talking about it is one thing, which is a good thing. But you have to follow on what you're saying as well. So we need to stay on Sardar Kapoor Singh's Vichartara, and we need to live on this Vichartara that he did. Now, I'm a university student. I'm used to, going outside and talking to university students. And I'm also going to be the head of the Birmingham City Sikh Society this year. Now, I guarantee you, if I asked anyone in my society who Sardar Kapoor Singh was, they would not know. But if I asked them what song Diljit Dosanjh released this week, they would be singing the lyrics to it. If I asked them to say Japji Sahib that part off by heart, they would completely struggle with it. If I asked them to sing one of Gurdas Man's old songs, they'd be happy. They'd be doing the Bhangra moves with it as well. If I asked them to join a Gatka class, they'd struggle with that. If I asked them to join the Bhangra team, they'd be happy to do it. So unfortunately, this is what we've turned Sikhi into, right? This is our fault. I get that there are agencies working against us. I get that there are people who are putting things into our panth. But why are we stupid enough in the first place to forget Guru Granth Sahib Ji and move on to other things? That's what I don't understand. I get that there are things in place. I get that there are people working against us. But Guru Granth Sahib Ji ne sanu aisa... They've given us such a platform. They've given us such a way of thinking. Why are we now getting rid of that soch? For Bhangra teams, for people like Gurdas Man who've sold their Sabhyachar long ago. So that's what we need to be thinking about nowadays. It's funny. If I ask someone, who's this Falana actor in this film? I'm sure anyone could give me a response. We can learn the name of actors, singers, dancers, models, all these kind of people. I doubt I could find one Naujawan who knew every single one of the Charlie Mukhtar's names. I don't know them all. But I doubt I could find one person who knows that. Yet we know who people like Sandra Bullock are. We know who people like that are. How is it we know people like that, but we don't know our own Shaheed Singhs? We don't know our own Sikh Ityas? This is the kind of mindset that we need to get out of. It's not about, trying to understand everything. Sikh religion is such a big thing. You can't understand everything. But, the bare minimum should be that at least every Sikh person knows at least 2 important Sakhiyan from our Guru Sahibans history. There's only 10 Gurus. We should at least know 1 Sakhi, 1 or 2 Sakhiyan from each Sikh Guru. But I doubt I could ask people that and they would be able to answer me that either. So this is the hal of the Sikh Naujawans at the moment. And the only way we can move that forward is if we have prachar, not just in Punjabi but in English. If we have it in other different languages, we can't get away now with just doing prachar in Punjabi, because half of the people drop out of Punjabi school before they even do their GCSE in Punjabi. So this is the harsh reality of how our Sikh Naujawani is. But if we're gonna move forward, we can move forward. It's not unsalvageable. We can get forward. But again, Sardar Kapoor Singh laid down this philosophy of us. He told us, the fact that he gave this speech in English, not in Hindi, is already such a big idea, right? He said, if you want to put something like this in front of the world, you need to be able to do it in a platform where they all understand it. And so he did. And now this is the one speech that's all over the internet you can access, that Sardar Kapoor Singh made the parliament accept that they were betraying Sikhs. But you can't find that in any other dharam. You can't find that in any other place, right? So this is, how we need to start thinking about things. Now, my third point is talking about one of the taboo subjects in our panth, and that is politics, right? A lot of people say that, Sikhs don't need to deal with politics. Sikhs don't need to take part in politics. There's a very, very good book called The Broker and the Thief, a Parable, written by Robert Gay. Now, he says in there that politics is a dirty man's game, and religion and politics cannot coexist together because your opposition will hold no punches at the end. Right? So he's basically saying that at the end of the day, politics and religion, you can't put them two together because your opposition's going to take advantage where you're not going to. Now, people say that. That's fine. Yeah? Sikhs say that. Sikhs are saying now constantly, Sikhs do not need to take part in politics. But can I ask you a question about that? If Sikhs don't need to take part in politics, why are we complaining that in 84 they destroyed our Akaal Takht? How can you say that Sikhs don't need politics? If you don't need politics, you don't need the Akaal Takht. But we do need the Akaal Takht. The Akaal Takht is our centre of politics. Guru Har Gobind Sahib Ji Maharaj created the Akaal Takht so that Sikhs have a place to talk about politics. Where is now that political centre? Khali piya hunda now, we don't even use it. Right? This is what we need to be thinking about. Guru Sahib has put these systems in place. Sardar Kapoor Singh talks about these systems. Other Sikh Vidwans, other Sikh scholars, other Sikh Shaheed Singhs have talked about this kind of stuff. Hun asi kyon nahi apna rahe hain? What is it? What's holding us back? What fear have we got? Because Guru Sahib tells us in Japji Sahib that Akaal Purkh is nirpaw and nirvair. He is without hate and he is without hate. He is without fear and he is without hatred. But we've got both in our panth now. We have fear for what other people are going to think about us, and we have hatred for our own Sikhs. Sikh Jathebandis at the moment, for the thing that they were created for, they're destroying Sikhi from the inside. They've become a caste for Amritdhari Singhs. I went to a Gurdwara recently and someone asked me, saying, what Jathebandi are you from? I was so confused. I was like, what does that even mean? He was like, oh, are you sure you're not from this Jathebandi? Because I don't like these people. I was so confused. I was like, what did Guru Sahib give us Amrit for in the first place? He was trying to get people together. He was trying to create that Akaal Purkh di Fauj. Not Niang Singhan di Fauj, not Taksaliyan di Fauj, not Akhand Kitiyan di Fauj. Akaal Purkh di Fauj, yeah, Sadi. We're Akaal Purkh's Fauj. We're not some Baba's Fauj. So what is it now that's holding us back? I understand, again, like I said, there are things that we cannot control. We cannot control the fact that the Indian government will not give us any Raj. We cannot control those kind of things. What we can control is what our Sikh gurus have told us. Why aren't we following that stuff? What's holding us back? What fear have we got? Is it the world? Is it what the dunya says? Right? Because again, Guru Sahib says, Jag supne jo jaan. We should be recognizing this world as a supna. It's a dream. So what we do here is what's going to get us forward. But the only way we can do that if we live in that nirpa or nirvair saroop that Guru Sahib was given us in the first place. If that's what Akaal Purkh saroop is, a Sikh is meant to be the roop of Akaal Purkh on this planet. So we should be focusing on moving that forward as well. Now, Sardar Kapoor Singh, obviously talking about the politics point again. Jawaharlal Nehru stated in 1946 that the brave Sikhs of Punjab are entitled to special consideration. I see nothing wrong in setting up an area in the north wherein Sikhs can also experience the glow of freedom. You know, that's what he said. And Sardar Kapoor Singh added to this, and he said that this is what Jawaharlal Nehru said in this speech. But by saying this, he promised an autonomous Sikh state. He promised a Sikh state where Sikhs had the most control. And then he goes on to say, and this is where he starts to bring out the nature of what the real problem is. And he says that it is these very Hindus of Punjab who, with the ready aid of the government of India and their leaders, even when their understanding was not qualified to keep pace within the wishes of their hearts, adopted every conceivable posture and shrank from no stratagem to keep Sikhs permanently under their political heel. First, by refusing to form a Punjabi-speaking state in which the Sikhs might acquire political effectiveness, and secondly, by falsely declaring that Punjabi was not their mother tongue. Right? So they are trying to keep us under our political heel, and our Sikhs are saying we don't need to study politics. You know, what sense does that make? The Akaal Takht was our Sarbochasthan, and what we turned it into now. It's a khali place where no one even goes anymore. Baron bari asi matha tek ke aande hain. You know, these are the kind of things we should be talking about. What is This vichar-tara that people like Sardar Kapoor Singh were talking about, it's the same vichar-tara that we've been talking about for over 550 years when Guru Nanak Sahib was on this planet, and they were telling us the same stuff. It's the same things that we're talking about now, but we're just failing to understand it. We're failing to live it as well. I was listening to a katha of this Singh actually, and he said something very interesting, and it kind of made me laugh as well. He said that, you know, we can read Barney and we can get to Sachkhand. And I was thinking to myself, I was like, yeah, that's part of it. But, you know, reading Barney isn't going to get you to Sachkhand. Reading Barney, it's like reading a paper, it's like reading a sheet, a guideline, right? You read the guideline, that's a good thing. But you have to follow it as well, right? The youth has made Sant Jarnail Singh ji their leader. But Sant Jarnail Singh ne ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਕਹੀਆਂ ਸੀ ਉੱਤੇ ਕਿਹੜਾ ਚੱਲਦਾ? ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਦਸੀਆਂ, the things that they told us to do. They said that any Sikh who cuts their hair should start keeping their hair. Any Sikh who's kept their hair should take Amrit. Any Amritdhari Sikh should become a pracharak. And any pracharak should make sure that their prachar is correct. Now who has followed that? Who lives by that? Out of all our Sikh Naujawans, I doubt I could find one person who works like that, who lives like that. Right? So this is the reality of how we're doing things. Today is 73 years since Bharat got Azadi, in that sense, that India got Azadi, right? 73 years of Sikhs asking for their own state. 73 years we've been talking like this over and over again. You know, we've been holding protests, we've been doing this, we've been doing that. It's great, it keeps awareness up, right? 73 years this stuff has been going on, but why has it not been working? That's what we need to start thinking about. Because maybe it's because we don't have evidence. We're not putting evidence into what we're saying. Now, obviously, when we've been doing seminars like this, we're just saying everything based on evidence, which is good. But when we take our case forward, we forget about our Sikh evidence and we go about what the worldly evidence is. What's the worldly idea for someone who's had a genocide? What does the UN say about stuff like that? Which is good. We need those points. But we need to remember what our Sikh Ityas tells us. But we need to remember what actually happened to us in the first place. I doubt if I asked someone what happened between 47 and 84, people would actually know. You know, some of the main things that happened, things like the Arya Samaj, you know, saying that Sikhs, Punjab was a Hindi-speaking state. Things like that. Half of the people don't know about. But we go to protests and we talk about all this stuff. That Sant Jarnail Singh did this, that we should be following this, we want Khalistan. You know, it's great. But at least follow what you said in the first place. You know, it's very, very simple. You make someone your leader. When the army goes into battle, whatever the general says, they do it regardless. It doesn't matter if they care about their own well-being. An army will follow what their general's hukum is regardless. We don't even follow our general's hukum. We don't even follow what Guru Granth Sahib Ji says. And we're expecting ourselves to follow what people like Sant Jarnail Singh Ji say when we can't even follow them either. This is what we need to start thinking about. What is it that's really messing us up? 73 years, farmers still can't put their own prices on crops. 73 years ho gaye. In 73 years, Sardar Kapoor Singh actually talks about this, and he says farmers are the backbone of this nation, but the government has smashed their backbone. The government's completely destroyed them. Farmers are meant to sell their crops based on their own pricing. They're meant to give their own pricing. The farmers in Punjab have to do it based on what the government says. They get 33% of what they're meant to get. All they get paid for is by their crop yield. But as well as the yield, there's labor costs and there's manufacture and there's maintaining costs as well. Things like, you know, maintaining tractors, things like that. All those costs come together to actually turn over profit. So if they're only getting paid 33% of what they're meant to get paid, how are they meant to turn over a profit? Of course they're going to end up in debt. So how is it that Sardar Kapoor Singh was talking about this in the 1960s? We're only realizing it now. Is it our ignorance that we're not prepared to listen? Or is it just the fact that we think that it is supniyan di gall hai? We just think that, you know, there's some sort of dream that he's living in La La Land and he's just making something up. You know, this is what we need to start thinking. If someone's talking with evidence, clearly there's a reason why they're saying it. If someone's got evidence for something, it's not that they're just making it up. There's clearly a reason why they're saying it. You know, we had this thing with Gyani Akaal Singh where he said that we love Kush is the Alad. There was a reason why he said it. And you know, that's what we need to start thinking about. Why did he say it? Right? And the problem is, are we acting like that? Are we acting like the sons of Guru Gobind Singh Ji, or are we acting like the sons of Love Kush? That's the real question. Are we following what Guru Sahib has said, or are we following what someone else has said? You know, this is really what we need to get down to. Follow the people who have set this path for you. Follow the people who are trying to help you in the first place. Follow the people who are letting you, giving you this information, right? Providing things like this. These things that I'm talking about now, these are basic knowledge things for Sikhs. You know, at the end of the day, I shouldn't have to stand here and tell Sikhs what Sikhs should know. At the end of the day, the whole point of being a Sikh, Sikhi Sikhya Gur Vichar, a Sikh learns for himself, then he learns off someone else, and then he does Vichar of it. But our Sikhs don't want to learn themselves. They don't want to read, that's for sure. Yeah, so they don't want to learn themselves. They don't want to learn with other people. They don't want to learn off anyone else because they don't want someone telling them what to do. And so then they never get to the point of Gur Vichar. And if they do Gur Vichar, then it's usually what they found off Wikipedia. So, you know, what can you find? What can you talk about then? What is it that has your nachor? How can you say you're a Vidwan? How can you say you're part of the Sikh Panth? I don't say I'm a Vidwan. I say I'm one of the most terrible Sikhs in the world. But at the end of the day, if I've got evidence for what I'm saying, you got to listen. If people are listening to me, it means that I'm clearly saying something that makes a bit of sense, right? So what kind of freedom do we have? You know, all these people in Punjab are celebrating, you know, Azadi, Independence Day. Good job, man. You're selling out your Sikh Panth even further. You know, at the end of the day, what do we have that is Azadi? What is it that is freedom, right? On the 26th of July, 1981, there was a World Sikh Dharam Convention held at Manji Sahib Diwan Hall in Amritsar, right? And you can find evidence for what I'm saying. You can find this in Singh Garj, right? So Singh Garj is a book that contains a lot of Sant Jarnail Singh Ji's speeches, and it also contains a lot of other different, very, very important documents that we can't find nowadays, that kind of outlines, you know, what the government was actually doing with us in the first place. So on page 602, it outlines 46 different things, 46 different shortcomings that the government has failed to provide to the Sikhs from the Azadi time. So obviously, from Azadi to 1981, it was only 34 years, right? But having said that, up till now, they still haven't done any of those 46 things. So 46 things have been given, 73 years later, still nothing, right? You could have at least have done one thing per year. They were very, very simple demands. Very, very simple things. Very, very simple things like, you know, asking Pakistan, getting a samjhota done with Pakistan so that Sikhs could go and do darshan of the Gurdwara in Pakistan. It wouldn't have been that hard. They could have done it at Azadi time, but they didn't. Again, severing us off from our connection. They're severing us from each side, attacking from each side. We don't realize that that's an attack on our panth. We just say, oh, Sarkaran di gal hai. You know, that's maybe it's just taking them so long. Really? 73 years? In the UK, they wanted to do a referendum here, and they got it done in a couple of years. Very, very quickly. India's meant to be the world's largest democracy. If it was so if we can say it was quick here, it should have been double the speed down there. It should have been mintas घंटा da काम होना चाहिए ਸੀ. But again, that's what we need to understand. कि सिक्खां नाल a betrayal है, विसाखत है. This isn't something that Sardar Kapoor Singh was saying just उदां ही. It was because there was legitimate evidence, and we can see it now. It's starting to come out now. You know, it's becoming worse and worse and worse every single day. We're seeing more Sikhs are getting beaten up. Those Sikhs who spending their times in Khalsa College learning Bhangra, those same Sikhs are getting battered nowadays. Right? If those same Sikhs had followed Guru Gobind Singh Ji's Vichardhara and had learned Gatka, had learned Shastra Vidya, who would have want to go near them and and try and pick a fight with them? No one would have even gotten that close. So that's what we need to start understanding. Kiya Sadi Sikhi. What is Sikhi really? What has Guru Sahib given us? You know, the one thing that the Gore would always talk about is what Winston Churchill said, where he said history is written by the winners, right? That's his most famous quote, that the victors declare what history is. So at the moment, who are the victors now? It's those same Hindus that are sat there that are destroying our Sikhi now, and they're destroying our Ityas. But we don't understand that. We say, okay, it's fine, ਇਕੱਠੇ ਰਹੀ ਜਾਈਏ ਆਪਾਂ, ਜੋ ਮਰਜ਼ੀ ਕਰੀ ਜਾਈਏ, ਠੀਕ ਹੈ, ਕੰਮ ਚੱਲੀ ਜਾਂਦਾ, ਹੱਲੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਮਰੇ, ਪਰ ਚਲੋ ਠੀਕ ਹੈ, ਜਿਹੜੇ ਇੰਨੇ ਸ਼ਹੀਦ ਹੋਏ ਆ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਕੀ ਜਿਉਂਦੇ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀਗੇ? Did they not have an existence? It's really deeply embedded into us that we can just live this really life dandy style of just not doing anything. It comes down to laziness, really. The Sikh Qawm has become lazy. We don't want to read, we don't want to learn anything new, we don't want to learn Kirtan nowadays, let alone anything else. I don't know how many Sikhs I've met, how many young Sikhs I've met that don't even want to go to the Gurdwara anymore. They say ਸਾਨੂੰ ਉੱਥੇ ਸਿੱਖਣ ਨੂੰ ਹੀ ਕੁਝ ਨਹੀਂ ਮਿਲਦਾ, ਸਾਨੂੰ ਸਮਝ ਤਾਂ ਆਉਂਦਾ ਨਹੀਂ, ਬਾਣੀ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਸਮਝ ਆਉਂਦੀ ਨਹੀਂ. So what are we meant to do? And I get that, it's not always the Naujawan's fault. I've lived through that. I experience that every day. I go to a Gurdwara and some Gyani will start yelling at me because I'm tying at the Mullah, even though it's our Pratan Dastar. So, things like that I understand, right? But at the end of the day, ਸਾਡੀ ਵੀ ਮਿਹਨਤ ਹੋਣੀ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ ਆ, ਸਾਡਾ ਕੰਮ ਹੈ ਇਹ. At the end of the day, the Naujawans are the ones who are going to take over next. If we don't know what our Sikhi is, we're going to keep decreasing the amount of intelligence for the future generation. So we need to understand what Sikhi is first, before our elder generation leaves us, before great Vidwans in our Panth, before they end up going to Akaal Purakh. We need to understand the kind of Sikhi that they were talking about, the kind of Sikhi they're trying to press forward. If we don't understand it, how are we meant to sort it out for our future generation, for the generation that comes after us? It's really, really important that we need to understand what is actually going on. And Sardar Kapoor Singh mentions a very, very similar thing to what Winston Churchill said, where he said the prerequisite of power is to invent its own past. I am putting the record straight for the public and the posterity by recapitulating this story, this sorry take of betrayal of the Sikhs for the trusting people. Because again, we are a trusting people. We trust people too much, I say. Again, Guru Sahib says that we should trust everyone, which is good. But at the end of the day, we need to draw a line as well. We trust people, which is good. But ਜਦੋਂ ਸਾਡੇ ਇੰਨੇ ਕੁੱਟ ਪਈ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਆ, are we meant to trust them then? ਜਿੱਥੇ ਕੁੱਟ ਪੈ ਰਹੀ ਆ, if you were in a boxing match, for example, if you don't keep your guard up, you're going to get hit in the face. And that's happened to me, so I know, right? If you're going to get hit in the face over and over again and not put your guard up, how can you complain that your face is bleeding? You can't complain then, can you? In the same way, the Sikh Qawm is continuously complaining that these kind of things are happening to us, that our Sikhs aren't strong enough in our Panth. Who's going to make us strong in the first place? Who's going to get us to that point where we are, that Guru Khalsa Panth, that Guru Sahib gave us that darja for? We were barabar to the Guru. We were the Guru Khalsa Panth. Now, we're not even the Khalsa Panth anymore. I can't see the Khalsa Panth anymore. I see a Panth of sheeps at the moment. It's like, it's like how in the Bible it talks about how Jesus says that his followers are like his sheep. At the moment, we're like that. We're not that Satantar Raj that Guru Sahib created. We're something else at the moment. So, this is really the kind of stuff that we need to talk about. Now, one thing I do want to highlight is, again, how I talked about Gyani Iqbal Singh. This is something that we need to talk about. In 1960s, there was a world regional seminar that took place in Shimla. Right now, this seminar was kind of like a religious debate, basically. There was a bunch of Vidwans that came from loads and loads of different religions to try and decide which religion was the best. Right? Now, when the Hindus were speaking, their spokesperson, Dr. Radhakrishnan, he actually targeted the Sikhs, and he said that even though the Sikhs have come here today to discuss, they should not be counted separate from the Hindu religion. And he said that he gave 4 points, and he said that Guru Nanak Dev Ji said nothing different from the Veds. Sikhs have relations with Hindus. The face of Sikhs and the customs of Sikhs are almost matching to the Hindus. And finally, that Sikhs are the improved form of Hindus. So this are the 4 things that Dr. Radhakrishnan said, and he said that these are what makes Sikh Hindus. Now, our Sikh Vidwans, maaf karna, nowadays, a lot of them will sit quietly. I mean, like the Sikh Vidwans that are here today, they're not people who sit quietly. I know that for a fact. They're people who kind of, to give them back an answer. But our Sikh Vidwans sat in India, jathedars, people who are meant to be leading the panth, they're sat quietly, right? But people like Sardar Kapoor Singh challenged his point straight away. And Sardar Kapoor Singh, on his first point where he said that Guru Nanak Sahib said nothing different from the Veds, Sardar Kapoor Singh basically did his Bezti. And he said that, okay, if you say that Guru Nanak Sahib said nothing different from the Veds, then are you guys fools? Are the Hindus fools that have had the Veds for so long but they didn't understand it themselves? Otherwise, nahi ta kar Guru Nanak hona si. But very, very clearly, you know, this is how our Sikh Vidwans respond to things. It's about giving action. Our Sikh Vidwans never let our panth, never let the set of the panth go anywhere lower than it Guru Sahib lay. But now people like Gyani Iqbal Singh, other people like that, continuously putting down the Sikh faith and trying to mix it in with something else that doesn't exist, right? The fourth point that he said, where he said that Sikhs are an improved form of Hindus, I don't think anyone could have given a better answer. He said that if Sikhs are an improved form of Hinduism, then every Prime Minister, President, Member of Parliament, Chief Minister, Judge, Army Chief, Police Chief, Sikhs should be given all of those. Because if we're better than you, then why have you guys got all the chaudhar in the first place? You know, very, very clever, very, very clear points. And that's what we need to come up with. Clear, concise, evidential points for who we are, what Guru Sahib has taught us to do. Because that's what Guru Granth Sahib Ji is. It's clear, concise points for what a Sikh is. Sikh ki hai asal de vich, right? But we need to move these points into something that every Sikh is accessible. When you go to the Gurdwara, not anyone can sit down and do part like they could in the days before. You know, back in the days, I'm sure all the older Vidwans can, you know, happily say that this was true as well. Pindane Gurdwara in the which there was always one main Divan hall where everyone could go and do Sarvan of Part. There would be Katha there would be Kirtan there, but then there'd also be a Divan hall on the side where there'd be multiple Prakash of Guru Granth Sahib Ji, and anyone could go and learn how to do Santhya, learn how to do Seva of Guru Granth Sahib Ji, take out a Hukamnama and actually experience what it felt like to sit on Guru Sahib's Tabya. Enne badde sade Gurdware bane a, lakhan rupaye assi kharchde a Gurdwareyan de utte. How have we not thought of doing something like that again? I understand that, you know, obviously Guru Sahib we have to make sure that Guru Sahib's Satkar is Uttam, but there were Granthi Singhs in those rooms to ensure that Guru Granth Sahib's Satkar was happening correctly. Again, why can't we have that here? It's not that difficult. These are ideas that we've had before. Why don't we just reimburse them and make them here? Things like this aren't exactly difficult, but, you know, it's things like this that we are struggling with, where we're trying to move into this modern world to impress the Gore, to be more like them. But at the end of the day, you know, the Gore said that our Raj was better. Maharaja Ranjit Singh had the best Raj in the world. So if Gore is saying that our Raj was the best, why are we trying to be like them? Sanu fir ki lod hai chaddan di? Sada apna Raj zyada vadiya siga. So we should be trying to bring back that Raj in the first place. So what do we need to do now? That's the main thing. ਹੁਣ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਕੀ ਕਰਨ ਦੀ ਲੋੜ ਆ, ਹੁਣ ਸਿੱਖਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਕੀ ਕਰਨ ਸਿੱਖਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਹੁਣ ਕੀ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ? Now's the time to figure out really who our true enemy is. What is our true enemy? Because it's not just one person, it's not just people, it's an idea. Ek-sochya. And it's the soch that we've created. Ek-sochya that we've thought of as well. Because at the end of the day, Guru Gobind Singh Ji Maharaj fought 14 different jungs. 13 out of the 14 were with Hindu Rajput kings. But having said that, not all Hindus are terrible. Some Hindus, I've got Hindu friends, a lot of them are really nice. A lot of them understand that Sikh Panth is different. But why is it that now we don't know who our Dushman is? Really, our Dushman isn't that one person. It isn't the one Dharam. Our Dushman is those people disguised as Sikhs who are now messing with our Panth. Right? When we take Amrit, one thing that is very clearly told to us is that asi teer malliyan naal sambandh nahi rakhna. That we are not meant to we're not meant to keep in contact with teer mals. Right? But who's the Tirmal in our Panth now? Tirmal kaun hai ਸਾਡੇ ਪੰਥ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ? Tirmal ਉਹ ਆ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸਿੱਖੀ ਦੇ ਭੇਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਿੱਖੀ ਨੂੰ ਬਦਨਾਮ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਆ ਹੁਣ. People who are in the pace of Sikhi, in the roop that Guru Sahib gave us, and they're in that roop and they are messing with our Sikh Panth. Those are the people who are now our dushmans. Those are the people that we need to target. Those are the people that we need to use our Gyan Khadag on now. Those are the people we need to start thinking about. Who are those people who are messing with our Sikh Panth in the first place? Sam, Dam, Dan, the Ped. These are the four things that people are using against us now. The Manu Simrati ideas are being very, very well implanted into our Panth. But how can we combat that? Bana, Bani, politics, history. Those are the four things that Guru Sahib gave us. Four main things really that Guru Sahib gave us. Those are the things we need to use now. We can combat it. It's not that difficult. You know, ਕਹਿਣ ਲਈ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਸੌਖੀਆਂ ਹੁੰਦੀਆਂ. You know, to say things, I get, you know, saying things are, you know, very, very simple. But it's not that hard. As long as we take that Sikh Vichartara properly, we can do whatever we want. You know, that Satantar Raj, that Khalsa Raj, we can get it back. But we have to follow the Khalsa Panth in the first place. The reason why I was talking about giving evidence in the first place was actually something that happened to me a while ago. I went to a friend's house and they had an Amritari family. But the kid had cut his hair. I was really shocked to see that. And then I asked the parents, I said, you know, munde ne case cut liya, ki gal hui? And they said, you know, ਅਸੀਂ ਬੜਾ ਸਮਝਾਇਆ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਕਿ ਗੁਰੂ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਆ ਸਿੱਖ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕੇਸ ਆ ਗੁਰੂ ਦੀ ਮੋਹਰ ਆ. ਮੈਂ ਕਿਹਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਚੰਗੀ ਗੱਲ ਆ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਸਮਝਾਇਆ. ਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਮੁੰਡੇ ਨੂੰ ਪੁੱਛਿਆ ਫਿਰ asked the son then, I was like, okay, you know what, let me find out why he cut his hair. ਤੇ ਉਹ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਯਾਰ I had a look on the internet, I searched it up. Guru Sahib never said that. There's no documentation that Guru Sahib said that case Guru di Moria. And then as I thought about it, I said, you know what, that's a valid point. ਅਸੀਂ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਆ ਕਹਾਵਤਾਂ ਆ ਸਾਡੇ ਪੰਥ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਤਾਂ ਗੁਰੂ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਨੇ ਇਹ ਗੱਲ ਕਹੀ ਆ. ਅਸੀਂ ਇਹ ਕਿਉਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਦੱਸਦੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ that Guru Sahib said, ਬਿਨਾ ਸ਼ਾਸਤਰ ਕੇ ਸੰਗ ਨਰਗ ਭੇੜ ਜਾਨੋ, ਗਹਿ ਕਾਣ ਤਾਕੋ ਕਿਤੇ ਲੈ ਸਦਾਨੋ, ਇਹ ਮੋਰ ਆ ਗਿਆ ਸੁਨੋ ਸਿੱਖ ਪਿਆਰੇ, ਬਿਨਾ ਸ਼ਾਸਤਰ ਕੇ ਸੰਗ ਨਾ ਦੇਵੋ ਦਿਦਾਰੇ. Why don't we tell them that? Why don't we tell our ਬੱਚੇ that? That Guru Sahib said that without shastra, without case, you are like beddan bakriyan, we can drag you wherever you want. But the more agya from Akaal Purkh is that bina shastra ke sang na devo derare. Without shastra, without case, Guru Sahib will not give you darshan. Isn't that a clearer point? And that's from Gurbilas Pathshahi Dasmi. You know, clear, concise points. That's what our Sikh Panth needs. We're doing all these fancy kathavachak, you know, stage shows and stuff, which is great. But nothing's clear to the Sikhs. Nothing's clear to the Naujawans. They sit there, they get bored listening to it. I sometimes get bored listening to long katha, you know, katha that lasts for like 2 or 3 hours. I end up getting bored, you know, because it's tough to sit and listen that long. But if we have clear, concise points, who can contest with that? So we need to start understanding what these clear, concise points are. Akhir de vich, I want to just kind of close it off with a beinti to, you know, my fellow brothers and sisters, the Sikh Naujawans, the young Sikhs, right, the future of the Sikh Panth. Like I said before, Sant Jarnail Singh Ji is our leader. You know, we've made Sant Baba Jarnail Singh Khalsa Pindranwale our leader. Bahut changi gal hai. You know, I'm happy to say that the leader of the Sikh Naujawans is someone like Sant Baba Jarnail Singh Khalsa Pindranwale. You know, I don't have a problem with that. But at the end of the day, you know, we have to listen to what our leader says. You could not be begging people for a Khalsa Raj when the Khalsa doesn't exist. You cannot be asking people, you know, that you want your equal rights for Sikhs when you're not living as a Sikh in the first place. You know, at the end of the day, it's important that Sikhs live in this Satantar way. Sikhs live in this Sarbuch way. The most famous Sant Ji quote that you find everywhere, that Sant Jarnail Singh Ji said, was that if the government attacks the Golden Temple, the foundation of Khalistan will be placed. Everyone knows that quote off by heart. But what did that quote actually mean? That's what no one looks into. What did Sant Ji actually say when he said that? What was the hidden meaning behind it? Really, in essence, he was saying that if the Khalsa doesn't exist, if there is no Khalsa Panth, then how can you expect to get that Raj in the first place? If the Golden Temple doesn't exist, if Darbar Sahib doesn't exist, that's meant to be our center of Sikhi. It was an analogy. He said that if your center of Sikhi doesn't exist, how are you meant to then ask for something else on the name of Sikhi? And we can see it now. Our centre of Sikhi doesn't exist. People don't even know the history of Darbar Sahib. People don't know the Shaheed Singhs. People don't know who laid the foundation. We're very quick to attack Muslims and say, Muslims are bad, Muslims are this, Muslims are that. At the end of the day, Sai Mian Mir Ji placed the foundation of Darbar Sahib. If you've got a problem with Muslims, take it up with Darbar Sahib. You ain't going to do that then, are you? At the end of the day, we're fighting over these silly things. Sanu jada maan ho gaya hai. There's a difference between having pride over your history and having ego over it. We now have lost the pride and we've borderline into ego. And what does Guru Sahib say about ego? Jen mel mare panch surbir aso kaun bali re. Guru Sahib says that person who can fight the 5 warriors, the panch chor, kaam, krodh, lobh, mohankar, he is the true warrior. इदां दा किहड़ा महाबली सूरमा आ जिहड़ा 5 उदां दे जिहड़े सूरमिਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਉਹ ਟਾਲ ਸਕਦਾ. ਹੁਣ ਸਾਡੇ ਪੰਥ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੌਣ ਆ? Who is there in our panth that can say that he's totally controlled kaam, krodh, lobh, mohankar? Can't say that. We can't pick out a name. It's not like we could do what we could at the times of Baba Deep Singh Ji, Bhai Mani Singh Ji, where we could have picked a name out of a hat and that Sikh would have been like that. It's not like that anymore. So we need to get back to that original point in the first place. People are trying to move forward. You need to move backwards. We need to understand what Guru Sahib's logic was. Guru Sahib given us this panth in the first place. Our Vishwash needs to be back in Akaal Purkh. Guru Sahib writes in Zafarnama where he says, Aurangzeb, you have this kind of faith in your Taram, you have this faith in your wealth, you have this faith in your Raj. My faith is in that one Akaal Purkh Waheguru. That's where our faith needs to be again. We need to bring it back to Akaal Purkh Waheguru. We need to live on Guru Nanak Sahib's logic. We need to use the blueprint that Sardar Kapoor Singh gave to the Naujawans. The book, Documents on Sikh Homeland, that book starts off with, on the preface, the message is, he says that this book is dedicated to the Pujangi Khalsa Fauj, who we have high hopes for in the future. He's given this book to the Naujawans. But I doubt anyone's read it. At the end of the day, all this stuff is dedicated to us. We're the ones who are going to take it forward. We need to step up. We can't be blaming our older generation if we're not going to do anything ourselves as well. Sanu vi sochna chahiye. It's something that we really need to start thinking about. Guru Gobind Singh Ji Maharaj's 52 hukams, number 27 is Satantar Vicharna. The Khalsa Panth remains independent. But we're falling more and more dependent onto everyone else. So we need to start thinking about how we're going to get that Khalsa Raj back. That Begumpura that Bhagat Ravidas Ji talks about in their Bani. It's one and the same. Khalistan, Khalsa Raj, Chakravarti Raj. All this stuff that we're talking about, Begumpura, it's all one thing. It's all that one idea that came from Guru Granth Sahib Ji. So let's move it forward. If we want to do it, then we can. It's not that hard. We just have to start listening. We just have to start following the true path. We don't need to worry about all the other Granths. It'll take you a lifetime to understand Guru Granth Sahib Ji. So there's no point in looking at all the other Granths in the first place. So akhir de vich, मैं ਧੰਨਵਾਦ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦਾ. I want to thank my colleagues at Akaal Channel, Jathedar Mahinder Singh Khera, who's always helping me out whenever I need it. Obviously our Prabandhaks as well, Johan Saab, who's organised this event every year, because again it's important to start talking about our Sikh Vidwans, our Sikh Naujawans, people who are starting to help our Panth in the first place. Sardar Kapoor Singh gave us this blueprint. Let's use it to bring back our Khalsa Raj in the first place. Akhir de vich fateh di saanj paiye ji. Waheguru ji ka Khalsa, Waheguru ji ki fateh.
Akaal Channel ਨੂੰ ਸਬਸਕ੍ਰਾਈਬ ਕਰੋ. ਨਵੀਂ ਵੀਡੀਓਜ਼ ਦੀ ਨੋਟੀਫਿਕੇਸ਼ਨ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਬੈਲ ਆਈਕਨ ਨੂੰ ਕਲਿੱਕ ਕਰਨਾ ਨਾ ਭੁੱਲਣਾ.